Hey there, and welcome to my first Sketchbook Saturday. I wanted to show you my sketchbooks. I have these available in my shop, and there's different designs. Each one has one of my pieces of artwork on the cover, and then it just has my logo on the back. The pages are completely blank, no lines, no dots. They're great for pencil sketching, colored pencils, any kind of dry media. I would not use wet media because it's just regular paper, but it does make for great sketching. I've decided to use mine as a sketchbook for children. I'm just going to fill this sketchbook up with children. So many children are abducted every year or reported missing, like 460,000, I think. And most of them, thankfully, like 98%, are found safe, unharmed. The vast majority are non-custodial parents are abducting them, but there are some that are not quite as lucky. And that's been in the news a lot lately. It's weighing on me. The way that I deal with that is by sketching. Anytime I sketch, it just puts my brain in a nice, calm, relaxed place. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to fill this book. Now, these children aren't necessarily missing children. These are just children that I've drawn. I went ahead and sketched this little guy out first. You see, I'm not even using a fancy art pencil. I'm just using a number 2 regular pencil that you could use at school or anywhere else. This paper is very smooth, and even though it was not necessarily meant for art, it is the perfect sketchbook for just regular pencil. The only tools I'm using, pencil, an eraser, and a stump blender that I'll show you later. So I really like to start on the eyes of my subjects. I like to be looking them in the eye as I draw them, and I just want to try to look for those highlights, look for those shadows, and look for any shapes and shadows that I need to put in there. The other thing I'm doing while I'm sketching with my pencil, I really like to do graphite sketches. I haven't done them in so long. It is so nice to get back to it. My brain just goes into a whole different level of consciousness when I sketch. I get quiet. It's just everything quiets down, everything slows down. It is so meditative for me. But the thing that I like to do while I am drawing is I'm constantly trying to look at the values. Since this is basically a black and white, really it's gray tones, but we're going to say it's a black and white piece of art. I need to get the lightness and darkness correct. I need to get the tonal values correct to make it look convincing. So as I'm doing it, I'm looking for where my darkest darks are. I'm putting those in. I am comparing those to different areas around that darkest dark or whatever I'm working on to see how much lighter I need to go for that area, how much darker I need to go, paying really close attention to shadows and highlights. And I usually like to go into the areas that are really dark first, get those in, and then lightly start building up my shades and shadows around that. Once I get some of that pencil laid in, I take my stump. It's just a paper stump, and it's called a blending stump. I use it a lot for graphite, and I use it a lot for pastel. And if I've gotten too much graphite in areas I want to lighten it up, I just take a sticky kneaded eraser and just dab that in there and lighten those up. So I'm going to let you watch for just a little bit. I'll return and talk to you a little bit more, give you a little more encouragement. But I do highly encourage you to sketch every day. It helps with your hand-eye coordination. It gives you a better sense of well-being. It relaxes your brain, and it is just good for your soul. So I'll be back shortly. The thing that I love about drawing with just a plain pencil is that you can layer and get darker and darker where you need to. If you make a mistake and you go a little too dark, you can always take a kneaded eraser or any eraser, but I like the kneaded eraser because I have a little bit more control about how much of the graphite it picks up, depending on how hard I press, things like that. The rubber eraser on the end of the pencil, that is when I want to erase everything. But a kneaded eraser gives you a nice little gradual way of lifting up that graphite, lightening up an area. Also, you can go as dark as you want just by going over an area over and over with that graphite pencil. Now, if you had the fancy art pencils, which I do have them, I just didn't feel like getting them out because I didn't want to have to switch pencils every few seconds every time I changed an area or wanted a lighter or a darker spot. So I'm just doing that with my blender and with my kneaded eraser. That is how I'm controlling the lightness and the darkness instead of going from, say, a really soft 6B pencil to then maybe a hard pencil that is much lighter. Instead of having to exchange my pencils every 5 minutes, I'm just using a plain 2B soft pencil and just doing my darker layers just by going over and over that area, and my lighter layers I'm using light pressure, just going over it once with the lead pencil, the graphite pencil, and then just, if it still needs to be a little bit lighter, taking my kneaded eraser and getting in there and lightening it up. Now, I've talked about the kneaded eraser and how important that is to me to lighten up areas to get the right tonal value. But another tool that I just love to use is this stump, this little paper blender stump blender, whatever you want to call it. It is just a really, really, really tightly rolled piece of paper, and then the ends are sharpened, and you can sharpen those with an X-Acto knife once it gets dirty, because, you know, it will get really dirty, and you might want to use it for pastel and use it for graphite, which is what I do a lot. So I just take my X-Acto knife and trim that off so that I won't get my graphite contaminated with pastel or my pastels contaminated with graphite. But it makes such a beautiful, smooth surface, smooth gradations when you use that blender. I cannot recommend it enough. It's better than your finger. Now, I used to use my finger, but that has oils on the end of it, so when you're blending with your finger the graphite, you're getting the oils on it, and eventually the oils can break your paper down, cause it to disintegrate, so you don't want to do that. The other thing is, you can start out you can control how light or dark an area is just by the pressure of your pencil. See how I am really getting some dark shadows in his ear. That is just pressure. I am just going really hard pressure on that paper with the pencil, and I'm going over that same area over and over and over to get it really dark, coming around his ear to bring it out, doing his beautiful hair, and I want that ear to sort of pop out away from his skull so that it separates. And the way that I'm doing that is just by making the hair around that ear really, really dark and just pulling out a few strands. This baby's hair is really messy, so I'm pulling strands out, and then where I did that ear, I'm just blending it, just softening it up where I don't want any hard edges. I'm even taking some of that excess graphite and pulling it into the lighter areas to add just a little bit more shadow in those, a little bit more 3 dimension. and just blending out some of those darker areas as well. That's the good thing about that blending stump, is once you get some graphite on the tip of it, you can actually use it as sort of a pencil almost, because you can take that graphite to lighter areas and darken them up with what's left over. So I'm just going to continue on putting in those shadows, trying to get my baby to look three-dimensional as best as I can. And the only way that you can do that is through light and dark, making sure that you're expressing your tonal values correctly. And again, that stump, I really love this stump. And it is nice and fat. There's smaller ones, but I have arthritis in my hands, so it hurts a little bit when I use the smaller ones, especially with as much pressure as I use. It makes my hands hurt, so I really love that really wide, fat one. And you can get them in different sizes, whatever's comfortable for you, but I really like this one because it doesn't hurt my hand to use it because it's so round, it's so thick. So now I'm just going to start working on his little chest, going in there with some clothes. He's got a little t-shirt on, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that on, just draw those outlines. In some areas I'm not even going to finish. I'm just going to do like some outline work, and that just gives it a little bit more interest, some contrast to that highly detailed face. And it's just an artistic decision. It's just what I would want to do. Now I'm working on that hair, and I'm just looking for clumps of hair that are really dark, and I'm going to shade those in. And then for the lighter, where the highlights in the hair is, of course, I'm going to go a lot lighter pressure with the pencil and fewer pencil strokes to look like hair. It looks so complicated, but it's really just a matter of lights and darks, how much pressure you use with your pencil, being able to lift some of it up with that kneaded eraser if you go too dark, and making the surface of the skin look smooth with that blending stump. So now I'm just drawing in that hair, just getting in those lights and darks. There's nothing magical about it. It's just pencil work. That's all there is. So I'm going to let you watch just for a second, and I will return to you. Now I have gotten the hair drawn in sections, and I noticed that some of the areas I got a little too dark. I want to lighten those up so it looks like highlights that are going across his forehead, across and around the side of his hair. So I just took my kneaded eraser, lifted some of that graphite out, and now for the shadows, I'm going in there with my blending stump and just smoothing those out and sort of pulling just the edges into that highlight so that it looks natural. And I'm just going to work on his shoulders here with my pencil. Now, if you want to do, a really fancy drawing on maybe some really fancy drawing paper and use your pencils, your fancy drawing pencils, then by all means do. But for just everyday sketching, this is fine. Just a regular pencil, a regular little sketchbook. It's fine, and it will still give you all the benefits that you're looking for and help you become a better artist. So it's up to you. I usually save like my Bristol board, plate finished Bristol board, and my fancy pencils for something that is really going to be an artistic piece. something that I might think about selling, something like that, or a commission, which I rarely take commissions anymore. I just don't find them that enjoyable unless it's a subject that I really like. So yeah, I save that for like my fancy paintings, but this sketchbook, as you can see, it works fine, and it will help you become a better artist to sketch, and you don't have to have all the fancy stuff, and you will still get a really nice finished drawing if you just take your time and don't get stressed out about it. So I'm just about finished with my baby. I'm going back in there with some kneaded eraser, lifting up some areas, lightening up, taking my blender, smoothing out that little shoulder skin, getting it just a little bit darker in some areas, because remember, I have some leftover graphite on the tip of that blender that I'm just taking into some of those lighter areas, and then just lightening up where the highlights, where the light's hitting the shoulder with that kneaded eraser. So there you go. I hope you have enjoyed this. I enjoyed showing you some of my techniques, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to try to keep doing this every Saturday, do something in my sketchbook and show y'all the process. So I hope you have enjoyed it. Good luck with all of your artistic endeavors, and I hope you much success.